Hey everyone, so today we're diving into something pretty fascinating. We're looking at what happens when an ancient sacred text gets examined through the lens of modern science. We're going to explore an analysis that does just that, focusing on specific biological and geological statements found in the Quran. So that really is the big question here, right? It sets up this direct comparison between passages from the Quran and what we now know from contemporary science. Let's jump right in with the first area the analysis looks at: the human body.
All right, so the analysis we're looking at kicks things off with something we could all relate to: the human body itself. The source document pulls several examples from the Quran that describe our anatomy and how we develop. Let's get into the first claim it examines. So check out this first verse the source pulls up. It makes a really specific anatomical claim about where semen comes from. It says this gushing fluid comes from the torso, somewhere between the backbone and the ribs. Okay, and this is where the analysis draws a really sharp contrast. Modern biology, as you know, identifies the testes as where sperm is produced. The source makes a point of saying that the area between the backbone and ribs, well, that's where you find your heart and lungs, not your reproductive organs.
All right, moving on. The analysis then looks at the very first stages of an embryo's development. This verse describes a drop turning into what's translated as a clot of blood. And this slide really gets to the heart of the matter. The analysis highlights that, biologically speaking, an early embryo is a collection of cells that are dividing like crazy. A blood clot, on the other hand, is just coagulated blood. The document emphasizes these are just two fundamentally different things. And staying with that same verse, the analysis digs into the sequence of how the human body is supposedly built. The text lays out a very specific order. First come the bones, and then the flesh is added to cover them up. So you see, the source really emphasizes that it's not just about the stages themselves, but the specific order. The claim is crystal clear. Bones are fully formed first, and then the flesh comes along to cover them. But, this is where modern embryology tells a completely different story. The source document points out that bone and muscle tissue actually develop at the same time, from the very same layer of embryonic cells. It's a parallel process, not one after the other. And interestingly, the analysis also notes that this whole bones before flesh idea actually pops up in old, pre-scientific Greek medical texts. Okay, next up, the source looks at a claim about how milk is made, specifically in cattle. The verse says it comes from a place between feces and blood. And again, you see this direct comparison. The analysis points out that milk production in mammals has nothing to do with the digestive tract. Instead, it's produced by specialized mammary glands, a completely separate system altogether. So then the analysis kind of zooms out a bit and highlights all the different materials the Quran mentions for human creation. You've got clay, dust, water, a blood clot. The argument from the source is that this doesn't really form a single, coherent scientific narrative, but instead reflects a variety of different creation stories from the ancient world. Okay, so we've looked at the human body. Now let's shift gears and see how this analysis applies to the wider natural world. First up in this section is about mountains. The verse here says they were put on Earth to act as stabilizers, essentially to stop the planet from shaking. And this is a fantastic example of what the source calls an inverse relationship. I mean, modern geology shows us that mountains don't prevent earthquakes at all. They're often the result of the very same massive tectonic forces that cause them. It's the complete opposite. All right, now for a much smaller, but super specific observational point the analysis makes. This one's about bees. This verse instructs them to eat of the fruits. And the source basically presents this as a simple observational error. From a biological standpoint, the diet for honeybees is nectar and pollen from flowers, not fruit. While some other insects might eat fruit, the analysis points out this just isn't what the bees that produce honey do. Okay, so we've gone through all these specific examples: semen, embryos, mountains, bees. So what's the big takeaway here? What's the main argument the source is actually trying to build? Well, it really all hinges on verses just like this one. The source points to passages where the Quran claims for itself a state of perfection, a total lack of contradiction. This is presented as a core tenet of the text itself. And that brings us to the absolute core of the source's argument. It contends that the Quran is making literal, testable claims about the natural world. These aren't presented as metaphors. They seem to reflect the scientific understanding of the 7th century. And so, the final conclusion of the analysis is this. If those factual claims don't hold up against modern science, then that challenges the Quran's own statement that it's a text without any contradiction. And that leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? This entire analysis touches on that complex relationship between faith and science. How should a text from a pre-scientific era be read today? And what does it mean when its descriptions of the natural world meet our modern understanding? That remains a key conversation in our time.